This is a TV show from the 90s called Pagan Invasion. It's just one episode, about 45 minutes long. And in this episode, evangelical Christians try to convince you that there is like some satanic cabal that's out to get you, that demonic forces are infiltrating every part of media and everything else. It's absolutely unhinged. So I've only seen a few minutes of it. Let's give this thing a watch and see what they have to say for themselves. This is Volume 1, Halloween Trick or Treat, Pagan Invasion. There's music in the beginning, so I'm just going to jump forward so we don't have to worry about copyright anything. Okay, I think this is roughly where it starts with no music, so about 3.5 minutes in. So let's give this a watch while we play Final Fantasy VII.
Hello, I'm Chuck Smith.
Hi, Chuck Smith.
And I'm Carol Matriciana. Welcome to this edition of The Pagan Invasion.
Halloween is a festival that conjures up images of ghosts, skeletons, black cats, witches on broomsticks, and little costumed children scurrying about the neighborhood.
Sure, I suppose.
Trick or treat! Oh my goodness! Hi there. And who are you? Vampire. Dracula's wife.
While there are some people who may be concerned about the origins of Halloween and its focus on blood, death, horror, and the occult, to millions of youngsters.
Okay, I don't feel like it's focused on blood, death, horror, and the occult. I feel like it's just a fun little kids' holiday where kids get to go door to door and collect candy from other people, right? I mean, sure, there's an element of horror to it, but come on. That's a little bit of a reach, isn't it?
Across the nation, it has been adopted as a time to pursue scary fun. It is an opportunity to dress up in ghoulish or fanciful costumes, to engage in the fantasy of being a witch or a vampire, ghost, or devil. Eager trick-or-treaters solicit candy door to door or bob for apples at Halloween parties.
Okay, I've never heard of this apple bobbing at Halloween parties thing, but all right.
Others brave haunted houses and horror movie marathons, while the more daring visit cemeteries at midnight, play with Ouija boards, and hold seances in an effort to contact spirits of...
Okay, it's all fake. I hope they realize that, but I get the impression they don't. I think these people believe that it's all real. Ouija boards and seances and all that junk, it's all fake.
The dead. One of the biggest promoters of Halloween is the public school system.
Oh, I bet. Oh my God. You know who this guy reminds me of? He's a dead ringer for Dan Barker, the founder of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Looks exactly like the dude. Oh my God, it's uncanny. Is this Dan Barker before he became an atheist?
School-sponsored Halloween-themed activities often include dances, costume contests, carnivals, and arts and crafts projects. Education officials admit that more effort is usually put into the celebration of Halloween than any other holiday, including Christmas.
You gotta be joking. You must be joking. He thinks that schools as a whole overall put more effort and money into Halloween celebration than Christmas? Come on. He can't be serious, right?
And Easter.
Is the stimulation of a child's sense of fun and fear all there is to Halloween? Or is there more?
Wait, she didn't introduce herself. What's her name?
For many entrepreneurs, Halloween is big business, a major promotional event used to bring in billions of dollars worth of revenue.
Well, I mean, all holidays are like that, so sure, I suppose.
In addition to the usual costumes of cartoon characters for children, a growing number of outlets are featuring more macabre and sinister creations for purchase.
Okay, now, she just made a direct claim. She claimed that companies are giving cartoon characters less and less often as options, and they're giving scary characters more and more often. This is a measurable question with an objective answer that can be found. But this kind of thing happens constantly in these, not just in videos like this, this old pagan invasion thing, but it happens nowadays too. Like, I watch a lot of televangelist shows. I watch Fox News and stuff like that. It happens constantly on there. They propose something that they think is likely, and they base that on intuition, when in fact there's actually an objective answer to it. And on a news program or a televangelist TV show, they shouldn't be supposing things like that. They should have the objective answer or not say anything about it at all. Are they making more scary masks than regular cartoon character or princess masks? Are scary Halloween costumes more common than cartoon character ones? I think the answer is probably a lot more complicated than a yes or no. I think it probably gets more common to find scary costumes at certain age brackets, and more princessy or cartoon character-y stuff at like younger ages, for example. That's my guess. But you know what? The point here is that we don't know. They just came out here and made a direct claim about something that is knowable and slipped it in casually because they're using this opportunity to talk to people in a casual way. It's like a casual conversation, when in fact, this TV show is not a casual conversation, and the claims that they make are believed.
This one well-known department store chain will sell more than half of...
Which one well-known department store chain? This is what I'm talking about. Which one? They are weaseling their way into objective claims when they have no reason to make those claims and no basis for us to believe them.
$1 billion worth of Halloween paraphernalia this year, and that doesn't include revenue from the sales of trick-or-treat candy. Costume shops such as this one are able to stay in business year-round as a result of the tremendous sales and rentals they receive during the Halloween rush.
Okay, I doubt it. Most Halloween stores are seasonal. For example, Spirit Halloween is a really big and popular Halloween store. I have not seen a Spirit Halloween that stays open year-round, and I live in New York City. There are multiple Spirit Halloween stores in Manhattan that close for, the summer or whatever. I haven't seen anything like this, but okay. Just one more baseless claim that I have come to expect from this.
Farmers also view Halloween with an eye toward making big profits. Pumpkins are a traditional Halloween accessory used by households nationwide as jack-o'-lantern decorations. This one Southern California field of only 164 acres will yield nearly $250,000 to its owner.
Wow, that's actually pretty cool. I like it. Maybe I'm in the wrong business. Maybe I should get into the pumpkin growing business, right? 164 acres is a lot of land, though.
Halloween is manipulated by the promoters of horror movies and videos as a major marketing opportunity.
It's manipulated? Wow, okay.
While horror films used to be synonymous with B-movies and considered the conventional low-budget industry standby, today they account for nearly 20% of all of the revenue received by feature film producers and distributors. The success of the technical revolution in special effects has attracted serious film directors to produce well-crafted, elaborate horror productions. A recent visit to the Video Software Dealers Association exhibition in Las Vegas showed that the two biggest selling artistic genres were pornography and horror.
I bet. Oh, I love it. What was it? The two most what?
The Software Dealers Association exhibition in Las Vegas showed that the two biggest selling artistic genres
Okay, so what were they again?
Were pornography and horror.
The first one I can believe. The second one, I'm not so sure I believe that. Horror? Maybe. As far as the first category goes, I don't think it holds a candle. Nothing holds a candle to it. Yeah, I would say that one probably blows everything else out of the water. Absolutely. Yeah, and is the first one even an artistic genre? Is that what you would call it? I don't know. That's a little bit of a stretch, but okay, guys. Think about the propaganda method that they're doing here. They are listing two things together and trying to conflate them, trying to make you feel like one is equally as evil as the other. The horror genre and the porn genre are equally as decadent and evil, and equally as popular as each other because they're equally as addictive as each other or whatever else. That's the idea. That's the perception they're trying to give you. That is what makes this propaganda. It's honestly really interesting to watch and figure out how they're doing all this stuff, but yeah.
Hollywood is continuing to capitalize on society's growing craving for the occult and demonic.
Yeah, and Hollywood is, of course, deeply evil in their mind. This whole, the media is out to get you thing, this harkens back to the old trope of Jews run the media and the big banks, and they're trying to, convert our children to Satan or whatever other thing. This is a really common anti-Semitic trope, and subtly, it's being repeated here. May not even have picked up on it if you weren't paying close attention, but that's really what they're doing. The media is this big evil conglomeration, this organization that's trying to trick you and manipulate you and get your kids to love Satan or whatever other thing.
The irony is that while these producers label such films as fun and make-believe, many of them hire practicing witches or Satanists as technical advisors who ensure the authentic reproductions and performances of rituals, sacrifices, spells, and curses.
Wow, that's a tall claim. They're all Satanists and witches, aren't they? Why do they even need to hire experts? And who would you call an expert in Satanism and witchcraft and wizardry? I mean, where would you even find a witchcraft and wizardry expert? Is there a hotline? Or do they realize that Harry Potter isn't a real person, in all seriousness? They do realize that, right? This is just bizarre stuff, man. Between 1995 and 2022, horror movies had 5.75% of the market share, and it's only number 6 on the genre list. Well, how about that? They made a claim that is not verified, that is not based in reality or fact. Surprised? Anybody? Is anybody blown away? Is anybody blown away by the fact that they just made shit up whole cloth? I mean, this should be the evidence that you need to not trust a word out of their mouths from here on, right?
People are so hyper during the day, they need to come home and watch something that's totally unreal so they can release themselves from all the pressures. It's just the type of thing that makes you laugh and forget about life.
Over the last 2 decades, most horror films have become far more graphic in their depictions of violence and cruelty. Movies affectionately known as splatter films routinely detail torture and dismembering of bodies.
Okay, I've never heard of this. I have never heard of splatter films. The only one that I can even think of right off the top of my head that even comes close to fitting his description would be Saw, the Saw movies. And that's just a single set of movies out of an entire genre. I think I'm just guessing here. I don't know. This is just conversation, but I would guess that the most popular subset of horror is probably ghost stories or The Ring, The Grudge, where ghosts come out of the woodwork and try to mess with you or something. That would be my guess. I don't know for sure. It'd be an interesting question to find the answer to, though. What's the most popular subgenre of horror movie out there? I don't know. Splatter is what they called slasher flicks in the 80s. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Interesting. So we talking Jeepers Creepers, Michael Myers, movies where they run around and have to hide from some crazed killer or whatever? Yeah, it's just fun, man. Come on, get over yourselves.
Drinking of blood and
oh my God, please. I would love to keep monetization here.
A host of other grotesque atrocities.
How did they get this onto the TV, what they're saying here? It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, we think it's pretty fun. A lot of people just like it because it's fun, it's wacko, it's not real, and so it's just the type of thing that people like to watch because you don't have to think reality when you watch it.
When it comes to gore or splatter or any other particular genres, the justification lies in our Constitution. I don't feel anybody has the right to tell me what I can or cannot watch.
Hey, absolutely. I love this guy to death. Who the hell is this? And why is his head 15 times bigger than it should be on a body that small? I don't know who this is, but I'm loving this guy, like, a lot. This is awesome. Watch. It turns out that he, like, did some heinous thing. He's got, like, Bill Cosby level crimes under his belt or something. I have no idea who he is, but he was absolutely on point with what he said there just now.
Particular genres,
Dude, it looks like he's a ventriloquist dummy, right? It looks like his head is just kind of like bobbing and weaving around like a ventriloquist dummy's head would, and his body is just a fake flat suit, you know?
justification lies in our Constitution. I don't feel anybody has the right to tell me what I can or cannot watch.
Most of these films receive R ratings, which mean that children under 17 cannot view the film or rent the video without the accompaniment of an adult.
I think that's under 18. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
Yet this precaution is seldom enforced.
Are you kidding me? It's enforced all the time. Of course it's enforced. You can't rent a movie or watch a movie or whatever if you're under 18 and it's rated R.
15 is the average age of those who see these films. While many producers claim that these
15 is the average age of kids who watch rated R movies, hard doubt. I'm going to need a little bit of evidence for that one.
gruesome spectaculars are merely fun and not dangerous to the psyche of our youth.
If you want to believe it's dangerous to the psyche of our youth, you got to come with evidence. There's no reason for anybody to believe what these people are saying. They're just saying it blindly and expecting you to believe it. This is like the claim video games increase violence, real-world violence. There's no evidence for that. If you want me to believe it, you have to bring proof, plain and simple. And they never do. You know why? Because there is none. This has been debunked 1,000 times over. It's nonsense. Video games do not cause an increase in real-world violence. Psychologically, scientifically, it's nonsense. Now, what does this say? Satanic Slayer may face death? What? Is this even real? All right, let me look this up. I'm really curious now. Is this a real news article? Okay, Satanic Slayer may face death, Daytona Beach, Florida. AP News. May 5th, 1989. No. I'm sorry. This doesn't exist, it appears. Okay, there's an article here from the Orlando Sentinel from 1989, but that's not from AP News. Yeah, I don't think this is real. I'm not seeing anything on AP News about this. And, you know, they're showing, like, the full article, so I should be able to just put it in quotes. Yeah, it's not a real article. It's fake. It's a fake article. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Does not surprise me that they would just make a fake article up. I should be able to put the article title in quotes and put AP News and hit enter on Google, and it will give me the exact results. Would you be surprised to find that they just completely made it up, that it's not real? Big surprise, right?
Many of the scenarios from the horror films are duplicated in copycat crimes, which make for sensational headlines.
Cult murders influenced by movie The Believers? Okay, I follow cults real closely, and I have not heard of this one. Let me look this one up. Notice there's no, like, it's fuzzy. It's too fuzzy to read. There's no newspaper name. There's no date. There's no nothing that you can use to look this article up. This is fake. This is another fake article that they made up. They just photoshopped it all the way back in 1990. But I don't know that Photoshop existed, but still, they made it up is the point.
Glenn Hobbs was initiated into a satanic coven as a child by his grandfather.
Okay, anytime you hear people talk about people being indoctrinated into a satanic coven as a child or whatever, it's made up. The reason I say that is because there's a book called, I believe, Michelle Remembers is the name of it. And it was written back in the 80s. and it was the source of the Satanic Panic. Michelle remembers it is a discredited 1980 book co-written by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pasdar and his psychiatric patient and eventual wife. Yes, that's right. This psychiatrist married his patient. That is the height of unethical. We actually had a medical ethics class when I was in school for psychology in college, and they explicitly instructed us not to get involved with a patient romantically, ever, no matter what. But anyway, so as far as I'm concerned, anything that stemmed from this relationship is fruit from the poison tree and should not be believed or accepted or whatever else, because there is a power imbalance here at play, and it's very possible that Michelle could have wanted to make her love interest happy or more interested in her, so she makes things up. I mean, maybe he, dug out false memories. I mean, false memories is a real psychological phenomenon that my mom experienced, of all people. So it's just not trustworthy. And here we have an example of it. Not only do we have an example of it, but we have an example of an actual discredited work. This was completely made up. So let me give you a summary here. The book chronicles therapy sessions between the two and alleged recovered memories of satanic rituals she claims she was forced to attend. Recovered memory, you should never ever trust recovered memories like that. If you're sitting with a therapist and they're trying to recover memories, don't trust them, seriously. False memories and recovered memories look exactly the same to the person recovering them. You can't tell the difference. Pasdar stated that Smith was abused by the Church of Satan, purportedly a worldwide organization predating the Christian Church. The first alleged ritual attended by Smith occurred in 1954 when she's 5 years old, with the final one an 81-day ritual in 1955 that supposedly summoned Satan himself and involved the intervention of Jesus, the Virgin Mary, and Michael the Archangel, who removed the scars received by Smith throughout the year of abuse and blocked memories of the events until the time was right. Completely made up, obviously. It's all fabricated. Like I said, it was discredited a long time ago. But that is what they're talking about here in this Pagan Invasion film. They're making it out as though that whole thing was real, as though this type of thing happens all the time. That's why I say anytime you hear them refer to like satanic rituals or whatever, don't buy it. It's completely made up. The first one was made up. This whole thing is made up. The Church of Satan isn't even theistic. They don't even believe in God. They don't do these rituals to summon Satan or whatever else. It's made up.
Glenn Hobbs was initiated into a satanic coven as a child by his grandfather.
No, he wasn't. And who is this Glenn Hobbs person anyway? Is there any evidence of it? Of course there isn't.
And continued participating for many years. I recently asked Glenn about his involvement and the importance of Halloween to the occultist.
Well, my involvement in satanic worship was, I was involved in it as a child. Of course, I was a generational Satanist, what they call.
Oh my God, I recognize him. Oh my God, wait a minute. I have a video of him. Glenn Hobbs. Okay, hang on. I gotta download this later. Give me a second here. Okay, check this out. This is from an old supposed documentary. Hell, maybe this is from another episode of the Pagan Invasion.
They will try and infiltrate your church. They will try and set up whispering campaigns against the pastor and the elders. They may even try to seduce the pastor.
For 2 years, I was involved in the Baptist church. I was constantly complaining about the pastor's sermons being too long, being too dry, sowing discord between the people, gossiping about others.
Yeah, obviously completely made up. But look, Glenn, the former Satanist. And here we have Glenn Hobbs, former Satanist. It's the same guy, except this guy's name is spelled Glenn, and here it's spelled Glen. Who is this alleged Glenn Hobbs fellow?
Call it generational Satanist, and what that means is that my family was involved in it, and their family before them.
Dude, how much you want to bet this guy is just an evangelical Christian and has been all along, and he's just playing a part? How much you want to bet?
Now, My earliest rememberings of Halloween and some of the things that were involved was, it was a very dark time for me as a child.
I bet. Dark time for him as a child, right? Yeah, totally. It was actually very dark for me. Halloween was when I was a kid. You know why? Because I was not exposed to like scary stuff in general when I was little. I was not allowed to because I believed it was satanic. And anytime, scary stuff came around, it kind of freaked me out. On top of that, kids would come like trick-or-treating. We had to turn our lights off and keep our door locked because we didn't want the kids to knock on our doors because we didn't celebrate it, of course. So, and everything on TV was Halloween based and scary, and so I wasn't allowed to do it. So, or wasn't allowed to watch it. So I would just sit in the house in silence in the dark with no TV on, just sitting there waiting for kids to pass outside because I wasn't allowed to celebrate it. It was a pretty bad day of the year every single year. It sucked. But let's hear about Glenn Hobbs and his terrible dark time that I'm absolutely sure that he experienced with Halloween.
It was something that I didn't enjoy.
Glenn, could you tell us about your involvement in any rituals at Halloween as a child?
Again, completely fabricated, all of it. There were no rituals that he took part in. I'm very sure of it.
There was another little girl that was involved in the occult with me, and her name was Becky. Now, Becky was a different type of child. She was blessed to be a sacrifice. I was being blessed to be a high priest, where she was being blessed and born into the coven there to be a sacrifice.
Oh, please, give me a break. This is completely made up.
Now, we were in...
Here's the thing. There were, from like 1980 to 1995 or something like that. Don't quote me on this because it's been a while since I looked these statistics up. I think there were like 12,000 reported satanic events or whatever at daycares, at schools, at people's homes, supposedly sacrificing kids to Satan and all this other stuff, like 12,000 events that were all investigated individually. And would you be surprised to find out that not one of them came to anything? Not one of them was investigated and was found out to be real. There were countless claims of satanic rituals being practiced on all these kids and everything. It was completely made up from the start. Completely made up.
Where she was being blessed and born into the coven there to be a sacrifice. Now, we were in a ritual where we were married together. It was a marriage to the beast. And me and the little girl were married together, and there was a lot of abuse that took place. And
completely made up. Entirely made up. This never happened.
A lot of blood that was spilt over us, joining us together.
When do Halloween rituals actually begin, and what is the ultimate purpose of Halloween?
Well, the ritual that I remember the most clearly began about the end of September. Me and the little girl, the one I mentioned named Becky, the abuse was very concentrated at that time. We were taken into several rooms where our clothing was...
Oh my God, he's going to go down this road, isn't he? All right, I'm skipping forward just a little bit because I don't want to hear it.
They summoned Lucifer and his spirit to come and possess me, and so that I would be blessed to take over the position of the high priest.
It's all completely made up. Like, was this guy ever even a Satanist? Probably not. Satanists, I know a lot of Satanists. These types of rituals do not happen. This is completely fabricated.
At a certain point in time. Now, Halloween night, they had again put me and the little girl in the back of this van, and we again drove off, which seemed like for a long time. We were drugged once again. And we finally came to this stop. They took the little girl out and they left me in the van. I could hear a lot of commotion that was going on outside. People that were screaming and yelling and this low murmuring and a moaning noise that was going on, like some kind of a low chanting noise that was going on. So I knew in my mind there was some type of a ritual going on because I'd heard that many times before. You know, it was real common to see people fall on the ground and convulse and go into convulsions during rituals and stuff with the demonic presence that were around. And
this is, I can't believe anybody actually fell for this, but this aired on TV. Seriously, this is nuts.
Finally, a woman came to the back of the van and she said, "It's time to go." And she brought me out of the van, and I could see that there was just a lot of people around. Some were dressed in dark brownish kind of robes with hoods over them. They took me up and they led me up to this stone altar. And I remember I saw the little girl, and she was on the altar. Now, at first, you know, I just wondered what was going on because you never knew. I mean, they used the altar for a lot of different things. They could have just been sacrificing an animal over, could have been abuse.
Yeah, none of this happens in the Church of Satan. If this was like regular practice in the Church of Satan would not exist anymore, straight up. This is completely fabricated.
From the high priest on to her, you know, it was a hard thing to know for sure. Well, they ushered me up to the altar, and I could see that they had bound her feet. They had her feet spread apart, her legs, and
okay, we're skipping forward again.
Little kind of like hooks, which they could bind the ropes around. And she was really white. Just I remember seeing her, and she was just real pale and real white. And I noticed that they had slit the bottoms of her feet and her wrists, and they were taking the blood that was running out of those areas and putting them into chalices and passing those cups around to different people.
Yeah, here's where it gets interesting, okay? As if it wasn't already. This is insane. A lot of this stuff, in fact, basically everything that they're saying right now, all routes back to something called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I've talked about this a couple times, but I'm going to give just a basic explanation again. In 1902, there were a series of magazines or a series of newspapers that released these little blurbs. They're about this long, roughly. Just little newspaper clippings, basically. They released them in the newspapers. There were 27 of them total, from 1902 to 1905, I think. And they called them the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. They claimed that, when I say they, I mean the newspapers that released them. The newspapers that released them claimed that they discovered these, like, documents on Jewish soldiers, and it was a plan for world domination by the Jewish cabal. Seriously. It turns out that the entire thing was forged. Like 80% of it was ripped right out of a book, a French book that was a satire that had nothing to do with Jewish people at all. Didn't even mention Jewish people in it. It was from like 50 years earlier than the newspapers came out. So anyway, the protocols that I was talking about, this is the protocols. This is the introduction. This is protocol number 1. This is what was published in magazines. This is protocol number 2. I mean, protocol 18, 19, like I said, it goes all the way to 27. These are out of order, apparently. But anyway, the point is, in 1905, this guy compiled them all into a book. And that book was printed in Nazi Germany by like Joseph Goebbels and Hitler and others. You know, they put it on a printing press, passed it all over the place. This is a copy of the book. This is from the FBI Vaults website. So anyways, the source of the satanic panic comes from protocols, comes from that book. That's where it originates, right there. The claim that they do these ritual sacrifices, that they practice these sacrifices on children and drink blood and all that stuff, straight out of the protocols. It's basically old anti-Semitic tropes that were used to demonize an entire group of people and inspire a hate mob to do what they did in World War II. That's the whole thing. So anyway, when I hear them talking about like these satanic ritual abuses and stuff, straight from the old anti-Semitic propaganda that was passed around in the 1900s to demonize the Jewish religion or Jewish ethnicity or whatever else.
Who were partaking of her blood. Then the high priest, he took the athami or the ritual, and he picked it up and he put my hand on it, and then he forced it into her chest. So when I think back on Halloween, you know, over that period of time that happened, you know, that was the climax event, Halloween night, where they killed that innocent little girl.
This never happened. This has been investigated upside down, backwards, and forwards. It's completely made up.
And this is something that's happening every Halloween.
No, it isn't.
That's not just an isolated event.
It's not a real event at all.
I mean, there are children all over the world who are losing their lives during Halloween night. And yet we, as a society, we go out and celebrate it, and we go door to door and we ask for candy, and it's a big celebration to us. And I think it's quite ironic how one group of people are thinking it's fun and another group of people are taking human life. And yet they don't, you know, there seems to be this wall and nobody wants to face the facts of what's really going on.
That we can agree with. No one wants to face the facts of what's really going on. It's just fun. There is no secret cabal that's running things behind the scenes, trying to, like, control, blah, 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 blah. It's all made up. Completely made up.
Today, reports from all over the world show a growing concern over the mushrooming attraction towards the occult. Heinous crimes connected with the occult, according to police, are reaching epidemic proportions. Halloween is the time when community service organizations warn.
Look at this. So there's a title here, and then underneath the title it says AP, comma, the New York Times. So which is it? Is this title from the AP or from the New York Times? Because they are two different magazines, right? Police suspect cult and child abuse case. I mean, sure, this happens very rarely, but it doesn't mean that it's linked to Halloween or Satanism. Automatically, people associate being a cult with being like a Satanist or something. It's kind of interesting how that works, right? Tallahassee, Florida. What cult called Tallahassee home? I don't know of any cults that famously were in Tallahassee. Like, not any big ones that I can think of. Let me look it up, see if I can find a cult from Tallahassee. Apparently there was a case of, like, a child abuse case in Tallahassee. Okay, I think there was a cult called the Finders. I've never heard of this group before. There was an investigation into allegations of Satan worship. Okay, this is Tallahassee.com. I've never heard of this before. I'm very suspicious of this website and this story. This is weird. I'm gonna have to look into this later on my own. That is really questionable and bizarre.
Warn that children and animals are most likely to be abducted. To truly understand the significance of Halloween and its role in this mayhem, we must go back to its historic roots.
Love the animation, by the by.
The south and west and north, hearken to the witches' room.
What you are looking at are actual rituals and spells being performed by practicing witches and druids throughout America and Europe.
Okay, well, I guess that witches and druids do exist. I suppose that's technically true, but where did they get this footage? And is this supposed to be like these people about to do some sacrifice to Satan or something? What is this?
These are not actors or reenactments. They are real.
Most of Halloween's customs are the remainders of pagan superstition relating to Samhain, the Druidic New Year. The Druids were the influential priests, magicians and sorcerers of the nature religions that prevailed in early northern Europe. These native beliefs permeated Celtic culture for about 2,000 years, up until the introduction of Christianity. Today, A revival of the practices of Druidism, along with various forms of witchcraft and nature worship, are sweeping across Europe and North America.
Owen, Kefera, power of the sun. Owen, Kefera, power of the sun.
And this is supposed to be viewed as like evil, I guess. Okay.
The Druid orders are full of people from all walks of life, from soap opera stars to doctors and lawyers, dentists and toilet cleaners.
So they picked all of the most respected professions first, intentionally. This is how propaganda works. They do this kind of thing intentionally to try to scare the shit out of you. Your doctor, somebody that people have to interact with at some point in their lives, usually at least once a year, you're going to interact with somebody from this profession. Doctor, lawyer, dentist, something like that. Or what was the other one? Toilet cleaner?
Of people from all walks of life, from soap opera stars to doctors and lawyers, dentists and toilet cleaners.
You're going to interact with these people at some point in your life, is the point. Sooner rather than later, probably. This is a fear tactic.
Anybody can be a druid.
I'm standing on...
They're lurking behind every corner. You never know who's out to get you, who's secretly a Satanist. 60s equals UFOs, 80s equals Satan, aughts is internet, 20s is litterbox and trans. Absolutely, trans panic is for sure the 2020s. I've noticed that a lot. But, people are gullible. They'll believe just about anything if you scare them enough.
Primrose Hill, which is one of the sacred sites in London. And it was here that the Druid Order was inaugurated in its last, most recent cycle in 1717, when a number of Druids from Wales and Scotland and Ireland and Brittany and England came together, and it is here that some of the ceremonies are held.
Samhain was seen as a time when the dividing line between the dead and the living was at its thinnest. Consequently, contact with spirit beings was thought to be easiest.
Completely made up. There is no quote-unquote contact with the dead or the living or whatever else. It's entirely fabricated.
Samhain was also one of the major fire festivals of the Celts. At this time, the Druidic priesthood led the people in diabolical worship ceremonies in which they would sacrifice animals and humans in ritual killings.
Human sacrifice has absolutely no place in the modern tradition. Just because we see a pagan revival doesn't mean that we wish to go back to barbarism of any sort. So it's a bit of a red herring. It's not something we like to talk about.
The name for Druids is believed to come from the Greek word drus, meaning oak. Druids usually select groves of oaks for their ceremonies and use the leaves in their sacred rites.
I'm sure I've made this clear enough already, but don't believe a word out of their mouths. Like, not one. Seriously. They have lost all credibility with some of the propaganda methods they've used and stuff.
The work of the Druids consists in reuniting us with the world of nature externally and internally with that stream of ancient wisdom and knowledge.
Sharing the Druidic tradition of nature worship is witchcraft. The title witch is from the Saxon word Wicca, meaning the one who practices sorcery. The Oxford Dictionary states that a Wiccan is one who is twisted, bent, or warped. Despite attempts from modern Wiccans to sanitize the original intention of witchcraft, its practice cannot be divorced from demonology.
O guardians,
Demonology, wow.
to the watchtower of the east, I, Ishtar, high priestess and witch, do summon and stir thee. I command thy presence at this our meeting, to guard over our circle and to witness our rites.
Hey, is that the Statue of Liberty or something? What am I looking at right now?
So mote it be.
So mote it be.
My mother was a witch, and my grandmother was a witch.
Wait, did she say my mother was witch? Like, shouldn't there be an A in there somewhere?
Witch. And I have been a witch for as long as I can remember. Since I have been practicing the craft. There has been a great revival.
I believe there's about 1 million people in England alone that practice witchcraft. The pagans are all...
Wow, a witch and a martial arts expert. This guy, this guy fucks.
Over the place with their covens. If they're not calling themselves witches alone, they are paganistic in their ways.
There are probably now as many...
See what they're doing here? This is all completely fabricated. This is all nonsense. I am very, very confident that this is just actors at this point, based on the way they're trying to portray these people. I mean, they're just people who are part of another religion. Like, come on. Can Christians never get away, or can evangelicals never get along with anybody? Ever? Like, give me a break.
Many people practicing witchcraft in Britain as there are committed Christians.
I regard myself as a natural witch.
I don't believe that for a second. They are desperate to make you think that you are becoming a minority. This is, once again, a callback to protocols. In the protocols, you remember, protocols of the Elders of Zion, there was a whole section there about how they're trying to replace you by having more children than you and all kinds of other nonsense. Like, it's all fabricated, all of it. And that's where the Great Replacement conspiracy comes from. That's what they are espousing right now.
I was regarding myself as a witch since early childhood. I was brought up in a very isolated part of the country, on the Welsh border, which has a long tradition of magic and Welsh sorcerers. It's almost as if there's a kind of grassroots feeling back towards paganism. We live in a kind of post-Christian era almost, and that people are...
No. At no point. I can't imagine anybody of a religion that is not Christianity saying that we live in a post-Christian era. People who are not Christians recognize how much of a stranglehold Christianity has on society and culture. Nobody who is part of a minority religion would ever say that we live in a post-Christian era. Ever. I cannot imagine that, honestly.
Moving towards a kind of neo-paganism, I suppose.
We learn as practicing witches to tap into forces of nature and to actually, if you like, send out a spell or an incantation or an invocation in a very powerful way.
It's, in many ways, to bring you back to nature, to bring oneself back to nature.
Okay, I know a lot of pagans and a lot of witches and stuff. I've never seen a ritual like this. Are they just making this up? Somebody in my comments or my chat or something, let me know if this is completely made up. Have you ever seen this before as a pagan or a witch or whatever?
Nature, and to learn how we fit in with the natural scheme of the universe and the natural scheme of the earth, and understanding what we need to do to heal the planet.
Because worship of nature is so central to their theology, large numbers of practicing Druids and witches are dedicated to today's ecology movement.
We have a number of initiatives which include planting groves of sacred trees and a campaign for individual ecological responsibility, which is concerned with showing how each of us can become ecologically responsible.
Hey, I love it. That's a fantastic philosophy, right?
I think the time is coming now where we have to take the responsibility by the throat and actually get out there and say, there are answers here. I'm not prepared as a pagan, as a priest, and as a practicing witch to sit back and see my planet, my mother, raped any longer.
I love the philosophy, actually. That's fantastic. But yeah, I don't think any of this is real. Hang on, let me just look through my chat, see if any, like, real pagans and or witches are here. I participated in very similar rituals. Really? It's not entirely inaccurate. I've participated in similar rituals. Okay, interesting. Well, maybe they got some Christians in there to, like, act in some of the rituals. I don't know. Or, hell, maybe they really did film a real ritual. I mean, I guess I have no way to know for sure. All I know is that these people have lost all credibility with me entirely, so I'm very, very skeptical of anything they put out. But hey, if people are saying that it's real, then, or that it's similar to what they've experienced, then okay. Interesting. All right, let's keep listening then.
O answer unto me.
Halloween is often confused as a Christian holiday because of its association with Christian All Saints' Day or the Eve of St. Hallows, All Souls' Day. In fact, the original Christian dedication used to be celebrated in May and was intended to honor those Christians who died for their faith. But by the 9th century, the influential Roman Catholic Church changed the holiday to November, and the Protestant Church soon followed. Today, a thin Christian veil attempts to disguise an ancient pagan festival of the dead, which has become not only a secular observance, but notorious as the most favoured holy day of witches, sorcerers, and devil worshippers.
A secular day. Can you imagine secularists enjoying themselves at these events? Scary stuff, man. Secularists shouldn't enjoy anything ever, right?
I can't really say when I became interested in Wicca, because it's always been part of me.
Witch Queen of Kent. What? Is this? Are they saying that she's like named herself some kind of witch royalty or something?
Part of my roots.
Like Mary, Queen of Scots or something? This is Witch Queen of Kent's?
I love Halloween. I think I'm a very autumn person. We dress up the house with cobwebs and so on, and we cast a circle. And we have a smoky cauldron, and we all scry, which means do clairvoyance, into the smoke which comes out of the cauldron.
Okay, that may be. I think some people probably do things like this. It's fake. They're not actually capable of clairvoyance or like divination or whatever other thing that these people think that they can do. It's just made up, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be the one to burst the bubble here. You think that if it was real, the military wouldn't have weaponized it by now? Come on.
And we open the gates of the underworld. And if any spirits want to come forward and speak, we listen to them.
My first initiation, when I became first degree, was on Halloween. And I felt very, very much in tune with the god.
The ancient Druids worshipped Baal, one of the most powerful of all the demon kings.
Oh, this is fascinating. Okay, this mention of Baal. Let me explain where this comes from. You may remember the Canaanites from the Bible, right? There's a group called the Canaanites. They lived in the same area around the same time as the Jewish people in the Old Testament, right? So, they had conflict with the Canaanites. Well, the Canaanites had their own pantheon. If you're unfamiliar with the term, a pantheon is just kind of a grouping of gods that were worshipped by this set of people, right? For example, Thor, Zeus, Neptune, Mercury, Hermes. These were all gods from, I don't know which pantheon, the Greek or the Roman pantheon, one of the two, I think. Probably Greek for most of them. Wait, let me look. Hang on. The Greek god is Hermes. The Roman version is Mercury. Well, anyway, so as it turns out, the Canaanites had a pantheon also. Do you want to know who was in the Canaanite pantheon? The chief god, the one that created everybody else, was named El. And then he created, I think, 12 gods under him, and they were known as the Elohim. Sound familiar? Some of the gods he created were Baal, Marduk, Ishtar, I think was one of them. Yahweh was one of the gods that El created, all from the Canaanite pantheon. So the Jewish people come along, and they make a deal with one of the Canaanite gods, Yahweh. He was the god of metallurgy. The deal was, you protect us as the Jewish people, and we will give you our full undivided attention. We will worship no other gods but you. That's why it's in the commandments in the first place, because there were other gods to be worshipped. The others in the Canaanite pantheon. Some of the other Canaanite gods are mentioned in the Bible. I mean, Elohim is an example of that. I think Ishtar is mentioned in it too. Baal and Marduk are mentioned a couple of times. But Judaism was a monotheistic religion. So by default, they're not supposed to really believe that any other gods existed in the first place. So naturally, they pretend those other gods don't exist. Now, Satan did not exist in the Old Testament. Satan was not a part of the Jewish belief system at all. Satan didn't come along until thousands of years later. And our modern interpretation of Satan, our modern understanding, didn't come around until long after that. It didn't come along until the book Divine Comedy was written by Dante. There is a section in that book called Inferno, and that chapter, or that part, formed out our perception of Satan and hell that we have today. But like I said, Baal and Marduk were both mentioned in the Old Testament, and that is what evangelical Christians believe, or that is who they think is being referenced in the Old Testament when Baal is mentioned. They think it's talking about Satan. They've kind of connected it, or they've kind of connected the two together, basically. So when you hear them mention Baal, they're basically talking about the old Canaanite god, who they pretend is a stand-in for Satan now.
Halloween, and I felt very, very much in tune with the god.
The ancient Druids worshipped Baal, one of the most powerful of all the demon kings. In the list of Enochian demons, Baal is said to be a king which is of the power of the East. Eastern religions emphasize that spiritual power comes from meditation. The common denominator between Druids, witches, and Satanists is the practice of meditation for the purpose of making contact with the spirits of the dead or disembodied souls.
You do a lot of meditation with the arts, and you get onto this higher plane. It becomes less physical and more mental.
It takes years of painstaking
Your mom's mental.
study, meditational work, finding your higher mind, being able to actually tap into the forces of nature and use those.
I have, on occasion, touched upon, I suppose you could call them spirit guides.
No, you haven't. You may think you have, but it's all fabricated. It's pretend. It didn't happen.
People describe them in a different way. I am aware of a hierarchy of spiritual advisors who live on another plane of consciousness that you can approach, that will acknowledge you and advise you and assist you.
You may think that's the case. It's not. This show is absolutely unglued from reality, seriously. Let me know what you think of it in the comments or on Twitter @TelltaleAtheist.